All right, one of the things, have you guys enjoyed the conference so far? Yesterday, today, has it been fun? I know all of you have really appreciated Frank's teaching yesterday. We're so glad that we can have him here today as well to give us more insight. And I'm sure even as Rabbi Lappin was talking about friends and the different Hebrew words, your mind was going 100 miles an hour at the same time.
How many were here yesterday when I spoke on a mighty warrior? Was that a different view for many of you? And we're going to start off today talking about rebel, wimp, and warrior. And by the way, if the echo's bad, find a place that's better. I want you to hear every word. And the reason I did a mighty warrior first is because once women know that they're called to be powerful warriors, then the teaching today for men to become warriors is not a threat. It's a connection, a partnership, an alliance. But when women hear men should be strong and mighty, for many women who've been abused, there's a threat to that. So there really has to be a view, even as I talk today, that for men and women, this is a partnership to conquer and rule together. If we do not, we will be destroyed alone. We have three choices we give our young men today: rebel, wimp, well, actually two choices, rebel and wimp. And most young boys and men want to be enough of a rebel, they're not a wimp. Enough of a wimp, they're not a rebel. But neither one satisfies them. And women, do you like rebels or wimps for men? And what we need to realize, in the midst of all of this, it's the warrior that's relational. Who does a rebel fight for? Himself. Against whom? Those closest to him. Who does the wimp fight for? Nobody. It's frustrating, isn't it? Ever talk to a man who's in bitter mode? Because rebel and bitter in Hebrew are the same concept. Ever talk to a bitter man about a problem and he just turns it back on you? And something happened in the same way that women were made weak and bitter. The same concept, isn't it? The next generation of men have become weak and bitter. If you look in the movies in the 1930s, you'll see there was a time when men treated women a little bit better. Not every man, but the culture understood. There was a time when men understood obligation, paying a price. If you look what's happened to our culture, we're not there, are we? So when you realize that the rebel is the one that is bitter, and all the words that I'm going to deal with for rebel come out of the word for bitter, mar. And mar is simply two letters in Hebrew, mem, which is the waves of water, which can also symbolize chaos, like the ocean before in creation and the ocean in the flood, and resh, which is the head of a man. And a chaos man, or a bitter person, it also symbolizes is the word for drip, just that constant dripping that you see, and from there comes the word for myrrh and bitterness. And a chaos man, a man of bitterness, has a miserable life. And I'm going to show you 20 maybe words around that word. And around the word for samik resh, a propped man, comes the word for turning aside and the words of life that follow him. And around the words sheen resh or seen resh, a devouring, sharp-teethed man, come the words for prince, ruler, warrior. A warrior devours whatever's between him and his goal. Now that, for many people, sounds bad, but if he's doing it for you, is it bad? If he's willing to get up and work hard to devour the problems, is that bad? Women, we're calling you to be mighty warriors. God's calling men as well to be mighty warriors. But a secret about warriors, you ready? is they fight for each other. They protect each other. They are not against each other. But if we do not teach our young men to be warriors, they have two choices: rebel and wimp. Do you see that? This is a culture-changing concept. And I'm going to describe these. I know the concepts. Warriors, I've been a marriage counselor for about 25 years. There are three kinds of couples that come to me. There are those who want me to change their spouse. Make sense? They're the rebel. There are those who want a comfortable life, but they're not willing to pay an uncomfortable price to get it. That's the wimp. There are those who are willing to do whatever it takes to succeed in marriage and in God's kingdom. That's the warrior. My job in marriage counseling really is to take the first two groups and put them in the third. And if I can't, to give them all the tools I can give them for when they're ready. Because sometimes I hear a year later, we woke up, we got it. But now it had the tools. But the truth is, you give the tools to a wimp or a rebel, they're not going to use them. You tell a rebel how to make it work, and they apply it all to their spouse. I can tell when a man gets what it means to love. Many men come to me and say, Frank, I love my wife, but you don't know how hard it is to love her. She does this and this and this, and look at all the good things I do back. You know what he's telling me? How much he loves him. How wonderful he is. And then one day they show up and something's changed in him, and he's telling me how wonderful she is and how powerful God is. And he's shifted to where he's now leading. By the way, when the Bible speaks of being the husband, being the head, we get it flipped. We think in Greek philosophy that he's the dominator and controller, and she's the servant. We don't think in biblical teaching that he's the one that goes first. You've heard of Rosh Hashanah? That's the head of the year. So here's what happens in marriage counseling. And men, I'm going to open doors for you to become the warrior you've always wanted to be. But often I'll get a couple who've gone to 3 or 4 other counselors. And at least at that point, they're blunt and honest. He will say, I have been hurt, I'm becoming bitter, I'm becoming mean. She'll say, I'm hurt, I'm becoming bitter, I'm becoming mean. And half an hour later, he'll say to me, Frank, the real problem is my wife won't follow me. And I will turn to him and say, if you're hurt, bitter, and mean, and she's hurt, bitter, and mean, and if her job is to follow you, she's doing her job. She's already proven she will follow. You show her someplace you want her to follow, and if you want her to humble, serve, give, you be the head. You humble, serve, give. Any women have problems with him being the head that way? In Hebrew, even today in Israel, they don't say charge in battle. Do you know that? Do you know what they say? Bo ahare, follow after me. Do you see the difference that makes immediately? Follow me. Men, it changes. I don't tell men in counseling. I'll say, if you have loved her and served her and shown her how to be humble, and she comes and says, yes, he's doing this, yes, he loves me, and 2 months go by and she's not following back, then I'll deal with her. But out of respect, I want you to lead. And there are reasons for that. We have actually often led women to bitterness and then blame them for not leading us out. A warrior doesn't do that. Women, I want you to hear what I'm saying and open the doors for your husband, your brother, your friends as men to become warriors. Men, I want you to hear that your heart's desire is to be a warrior, and God wants you to become it. There are the three words I've told you: prince, ruler, warrior, bitter, embittered rebel, and the propped man, sullen, sad, wimp, and angry. The wimp is childish. And understand, every person in this room, every person watching is both rebel, wimp, and warrior. The laziest man I've known in my life, so lazy that if he were to walk across this room at one point on the job site, it would take him half an hour. Literally, I've watched him. But every so often he'd go fishing, and he'd be up at 4 a.m, and he'd be a warrior, motivated, driven, hunting, conquering. What was the difference? He wasn't a wimp in every area. There were areas he was a warrior. And men, in those areas, have you liked who you are? Did you know, men, that women are not attracted to our beauty? It's a good thing for me. Take a look in a mighty warrior, take a look at Sally's picture, take a look at my picture. I'm grateful. Men, we are attracted by beauty. Not won by it, by attracted. A woman's beauty can have us look, her heart can have us run, but we're attracted by beauty. Do you know what women are attracted by? Power. And I'll have a man who's got young kids and he's kicked out of the house, and he comes to me in misery and say, "Frank, what do I do?" And I will tell him just what I've told you, and I'll say there's 3 kinds of power that will attract a woman: financial, spiritual, relational. So if you're stuck in a small apartment, don't pout. Don't become a wimp. Don't become bitter. Become a warrior. Work extra hours. Become the best dad in the world. She may have a closed door between you and her. She has an open door to the kids. And become a godly man. And if 2 of those 3 become solid, she'll probably take a second look. But if she never does, you will have become the man you want to be. You catch that? How many men walk into marriage, try to please the woman, avoid becoming a real warrior, become a wimp or bitter, and don't like who they are, and blame their wife for their misery? Hear me, it's not your wife. If you're not a warrior, you will not be happy, will you? If you are a warrior, ever go to a restaurant? How many here have ever worked in a restaurant and seen an 80-some-year-old couple? How many times in that 80-some-year-old couple do you see one who is loving and giving, helping, and one who's crabby and nothing's ever right with? Ever see that? Think about it for a second. The loving one, they're the happy one, right? But who are they married to? The crab. And the crabby one's never happy, but who are they married to? The loving, giving one. It's not who you're married to that makes you happy, it's who you are. Now, there's other things to deal with problems in marriage. We're not talking about that today. That's a legitimate conversation and worthy an entire conference for those issues. We are talking about you today. Out of character comes life. Now, for many of you, have you seen before when I do the Hebrew alphabet and the ancient letters and how the pictures work together? If you haven't, go back to some of the old videos at El Shaddai and watch that. Because the images in these things matter. We do the alphabet, which we get our ABC from in English. And you get the words like father, which is the aleph of the bet, the strength or the leader of the house. You get the word for mother, who's the aleph mem. She's the first or the strong water. She's the life giver. Here are some words that come from the warrior. And I wish I could show you. The aleph. If I put aleph in front of the word for prince or warrior, I get the word Ashar. The tribe of Asher. It is the strength of a warrior. It is what is straight, right, upright, erect, firm, strong, to go forward, to be successful, to prosper, to be fortunate. It also could be the esh, or the fire on the head, or the fire of the warrior. When we're told in the New Testament to bless those that curse us, what will happen to them? There'll be coals of fire on the head. When did you see fire on the head in the New Testament? Pentecost, God's presence. There's something about blessing people that either will drive them crazy or bring them to the presence of God. There's something about a warrior that leads straight, and he brings people to a new place. The root word that all this starts from, you know the name Sarah? Sarah obeyed Abraham and called him Lord, or she called him Lord, right? Do you know what the opposite is? We only hear half the story. God renamed Sarai to Sarah. Sarah's prince, you put the yud at the end, it's what belongs to the prince, that's the princess. That's like royal blood, right? Sarah, remember Sar means commander, ruler, not prince, but in the sense of being in charge of an area, not royal blood, commander. And Sarah is the female commander. She called him Lord. God renamed her commander. And that same word, Sarah, not as a name, but now as a word, means to put things in order. To struggle with them and conquer them, and to rule over them. This is the first choice to becoming a warrior. If you have things that are not in order in your life, you have to put them in order. If you look at the areas in your life where you are a warrior, because they are there, are they in order? Yeah. Have you conquered them? Yes. Do you rule over them? Yes. You look at areas where you are out of control, where life is not pleasant, it is not enjoyable, you are being victimized, you're not the ruler. Are they in order? No. Have you conquered them? No. Do you rule over them? No. The root concept is to put things in order, conquer, and rule. If I add a resh at the end of Sar, so now it's the head warrior, if you will, or the chief warrior. You get to contend, to prevail, to rule. If I put a vav, you've heard that today, what a vav is, right? It's the hook, the nail. It's what connects. And here it's the inner part of the life. If I put the vav in the middle of the word for warrior, you get the word to go around, to look around, to behold, to lie and wait. This is to watch the way a lion watches. The root, the inner core, the inner establishment of a warrior is when you become like a lion and you prowl your territory so you can understand it. You take anybody of great skill in any field, doctor, chef, you name it, they're reading what's coming in their field. They're prowling their territory. They know what's coming, what's going, what is, what's off. It's like a lion that sees this antelope herd, and he knows this one, whenever it gets scared, jumps back into the left. So when that lion attacks that antelope, where does he jump? Back into the left. He knows before. But there's a part of that seeing. This is why we study. This is why we learn. This is why we learn wisdom. There's a part of the seeing that changes your ability to conquer. But if you don't put things in order, you are in trouble. God does not want for you to be a wimp or a rebel. He has given you the tools to conquer life. And again, this applies to women as much as men. The difference is the two books I'm writing, A Mighty Warrior, is clearly to teach women who they can be and men the value of a mighty warrior. This is teaching men who they can be and women the value of a powerful, mighty warrior. We can all apply it to all of us. The precepts apply every way. But we have to have each other's back, and the first thing is to put things in order. Can you think again the things in your life which are in order and the things which are out of order? Which one causes you pain? It's simple. And often my things that are out of order cause my wife Sally's pain. The next one, Yashar. It's the hand of the prince. It's to be straight, especially of a path away to be even level, used of an even mind that is tranquil and to succeed. But until you're a warrior, it doesn't work. Do you see that? There's a secret I've learned in counseling. The way we walk is how we do all the small things. You do 100 decisions to face something and conquer it and put it in order, 100 small things. Guess what happens when you hit the one big thing? You do exactly what you've done for the 100 small things. When something gets so big, it goes beyond our ability to think and process, we start acting out of habit. A habit is what you do when you're not thinking. Make sense? But you can change your habits on things that are not so scary that you can think. When you go into survival mode, you go into habit mode. How many fights have you had in your marriage or friendships that have been more habit than fight? She says this, you can script it, can't you? She says, he says, she says, he says. And if you're just doing the record of that, it's habit. So I tell people, take those fights, put them on the shelf for 2 months. You're not even thinking. You're not fighting. You're echoing. Put them on the shelf for 2 months. Take smaller things and make choices. Make new habits. That's not hard, is it? Put things in order. Make a decision. We will have 10 minutes of hearing each other, not arguing. And do it over the color of a car. Something that you don't get so desperate about that you have to shut them down and be heard. Because that's your habit, isn't it? You're out of control. You're reacting out of weakness or bitterness. You're not a warrior. You're not putting things in order. You're not blessing them. We can get on the list, can't we? Is that a pleasant life when you get bitter? I don't like who I am when I'm bitter. There are actually times when I am stuck in the flesh. I am hurt, I am weak, I am bitter, everything. And I stop myself and say, I'm going to choose to humble and follow God. And honestly, at that moment, I don't care about Sally. I just told you, I'm stuck, I'm hurt, I'm in the flesh, right? So let's be honest. But I'm honestly realizing I don't like who I am there. I don't like who I am without God. I don't like who I am as a wimp. I don't like who I am as a rebel. And I remember what it's like to be a warrior. And I like that, man. Right? And I will shift to become a warrior, not for Sally, not because she's right, not because I'm wrong, just because I don't want to be the rebel or the wimp. Now, once I've shifted and turned my heart, half a step later, I repent. I get it. That comes. But when I'm stuck, at least I know it's the misery's who I am, not what she's doing. It's a choice of my character changes my life. And if I could show you all the words that are in here, I'd show you 20, 30 words that, in fact, we'll talk about some in a while here too. But Sar is a prince, a ruler, a commander, the teeth man, the devourer. And you want that, don't you? When there's an army protecting us, we want them armed. When the police are protecting us, we want them armed. We want them to devour whatever is evil in our life, right? And the warrior does that. The warrior is armed. Then you've got the word ayin, an I in front of it. And it's the word, it's interesting. There's three ways ayin, samik, ayin, shin, resh can be, or ayin, sin, resh can be, three words they can become. One is the word for 10. Because Sar, as a soldier, is in charge of at least 10 men. He is a ruler. He's not just a warrior, he's a ruler. And to see the soldier, there's 10 men there, to see the warrior. So the word 10, and look all over the Bible, rulers of 10, rulers of 50, rulers of 100. To see that 10, you deal with the warrior. And to see the prince is also the word for tithe. Let me explain that to you. Tithing is a relationship. Everybody you know tithes. That first 10% is given to your prince. You recognize that prince by where you give the 10%. The only question is, who is your prince? That's the only question. And the last word with the same 3 letters, same picture, is to grow rich, to prosper. Because it's a relationship. You've been faithful in little, I give you more. Tithing is not an issue of money. If we think that, we've got it messed up. Tithing is a thing of relationship, of gratitude, of recognizing, of choosing my prince. Because there was a time when they gave the physical tithe to the physical rulers by taking it and going face to face and giving it. And when you gave it, you said, "You are my prince." And the prince could turn around and say, "And I'm going to take care of you." It's a mutual relationship. And by the way, you can't tithe to me, so I can be blunt about it. I can come in and say, if you want to see prosperity in the community, in your life, you want the heart of a warrior, you want to really see your prince, and you want to join in and work together. And part of that is tithing. If that's not something you do readily, then there's a problem in the relationship. Obviously, you're not grateful. Obviously, you've got another prince. You're tithing someplace. An honest assessment would say you'd figure out where you're tithing, right? And why? And do we expect to change our culture when we do not fund the church and the synagogue, but we fully fund Hollywood? Which one's going to change the culture? The one we tithe to. Making you think? Do not hear guilt. I'm saying we've been trapped as wimps, trapped as rebels. We were never meant to be that way. If you're not happy as a wimp or a rebel, it shows you it's not who you are. Right? I don't look out here and see wimps and rebels. I see people sometimes trapped who will be fulfilled only as a warrior. Warriors are the relationship-based one. That's what many women don't understand about men. The deepest bonds men make are in battle. They've done studies on it. And if you want to really bond with a man, find a battle to join him in against something. Do a project with him. We bond over that. I'm old enough that I remember growing up, and there was a guy across the street and down the road who was quiet and nice and good, but you'd walk by, I'd wave, he wouldn't wave back. He was too much of an introvert. Good man, but just, and we knew his kids, we loved his kids, but once or twice a year, he'd have a friend who had gone through the trenches with him in World War II, and he would change. These are people he loved, he served, he gave. One bled, the other took care of him. They hauled each other places. These were the deepest bonds I'd ever seen in a man. And until men become warriors, women think of this, and men think of it, men will never fully bond. We don't bond over emotions. Women, have you figured that out yet? But we bond. We bond deeply. But we don't do it talking. We do it as warriors. You want a man to trust you? Guard his back in battle. Prove yourself, and you've got his heart. Is that true, men? Women, has anybody ever told you this before? It is awesome. I get to do counseling. I get to have men with women. I've had men come to counsel with his wife that 10 years ago, by some other counselor, he was diagnosed as emotionally frozen. Ever know a man like that? In 10 minutes, I had him go in deep emotions. Because I knew how to appeal to the heart of a warrior. And if you don't know the heart of a warrior, you can't talk to a man. In fact, the most you'll do is the heart you're talking to, you talk to the heart of a wimp, you'll get a wimp usually talking back. Talk to the heart of a rebel, you'll get a rebel talking back. If no one's taught you how to talk to the heart of a warrior, you'll never see it. Unless somebody's teaching him to become a warrior. But even then, if you don't talk to that warrior, you'll never get the depth of his heart. There's a reason why boys play war games. There's a reason they play video games. They hunger not to be a wimp or a rebel. They hunger to be a warrior and a hero. If you go to any bathroom in Israel and look on the door for men, you see the word hero. Did you know that? Gever Gibor, as in Gabriel, means hero. Now, what happens when a boy becomes a hero? He gives himself. What happens when a man becomes a hero? He gives himself. He lives for others. And if you want a man to really turn his heart and turn his life, find a way to treat him like a hero where he's acting like a hero, because he will work 10 times harder. If you treat him like a schmuck, he gives up. And we're different than women. We're both called to be mighty warriors, but we're different. So the word to see the prince is 10. We don't function alone. Men do bond in groups. Women bond in groups. Is tithe and is prosper. All of those things we need to do together. The word picture, if I put a bet in front of the word for prince or warrior, remember what bet means? A house. The house of the warrior, guess what that word is? The gospel. Think about that. If you're in the house of the prince, that's the gospel. Yeshua is a prince. He's Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace. And he's calling us to become like him. And his house is the house of the gospel, the house of the prince. Noon in front, living, active. The living prince is the word for an eagle. Nesser. Shin, Resh, Hey. Hey's the feminine ending. It means what comes out of. Man, Ish. Woman, Isha. The feminine ending's added because she came out of man. In Israel today, the rule is in school that if it's in the Bible, that's the rule. Biblical Hebrew makes the rule. And what comes out of the prince is the word to set free, to loose. You want freedom? Become a warrior. You want your children to have freedom? Become a warrior. You want your friends to have freedom? Become a warrior. Freedom doesn't come without a warrior. Memorial Day weekend, we should know that, shouldn't we? Then there's the word sarad. This is the root word. It means to flee, to escape, to survive. It's the door of the warrior. There's a door that only warriors have. Do you know why? They help each other. A warrior can survive when nothing else can survive. But one of the reasons is wimps will run, rebels will turn on each other, warriors carry each other, leaving no man behind. If you want to survive, surround yourself with warriors. If you want to be deserted, find a wimp. If you want to be attacked, find a rebel. Look back on your life. How many relationships are going through your mind right now? It's true, isn't it? But here's the danger. Women are looking sometimes when they're dating for sweet, tender, nice men. And sometimes they're just con men, because sometimes the con man will lie to you. Oh, I love you forever. He said that to the last woman last week. The warrior is slower, and often they may not know how to do it. But you're looking for the man who puts things in order in his life. You're looking to become the man that puts things in order in your life. And whatever is causing you misery, if you're a man, hunt it down, prowl, look, watch, learn, and start on the small things and put them in order. That's the choice. If you do that, you become a warrior. It's not hard, is it? We'll come to the other places, what happens if you do the other. The bitter rebel, the chaos man. So put a vav, remember the vav in the middle of warrior? It's to watch like a lion, to hunt, to prowl. Do the same thing, it's the root of the bitter rebel. It's the word to exchange, buy or sell our vows and promises. It says God changes not. God does not do this. But you've all been in the place where a relationship and a hurt, we choose the hurt. We don't hold to the covenant. We allow bitterness to come in. We allow the root of bitterness to strangle us and our character. There are times that you deal with issues. You deal with wisdom, you deal with finality, but you never deal with bitterness. You catch the difference? I'm not telling you allow abuse to go on or allow things to be wrong. Warriors don't do that, do they? Warriors deal with things. And if you have to deal with a problem, you don't wait until you're so bitter that you're dealing with it out of bitterness as a rebel. You deal with it by putting things in order, not exploding. And that's tricky, because sometimes what we're saying is so right, but we've become bitter. And we're wrong. There are times when I'm talking to Sally and I'm right on the issue, but my heart has closed down, closed off, and I become bitter. That God will simply tell me, Frank, forget the issue, you're wrong. And if I become bitter, at someday I'm going to write a book called A Godly Divorce. And most of the book, there are times when a divorce really is needed. Incest, you should choose the child, not the parent. I don't care what anybody else says, that's what I believe. But most of this will be people who are innocent drugged through a divorce. And what happens, what destroys them is never, the divorce hurts. What destroys is when their character is turned. Bitterness destroys. Becoming a wimp destroys. And I've seen people choose to do it God's way through a divorce. Choose to become a warrior, not a rebel or a wimp. And when the divorce is through, they've been hurt, but they are mighty. And I've seen innocent people get caught up in bitterness and a wimp, and when the divorce is through, they're devastated. A godly divorce, it's like saying, godly problems. How do you handle a problem in a godly way? Who I am is more important than who they are. If they're bitter, I don't become bitter. All Sally can do at her worst, and believe me, she's a godlier woman than I'm a godly man. But all she can do at her worst is drive me to God. Right? All I can do at my worst is drive myself to a false God. So you've got the root of bitterness. You've got marah, the hay at the end, the feminine ending. To reject everybody's authority and obligation we owe. It's stubbornly or willfully disobedient to strike out with the hand or the mouth. Ever been there? Where bitterness now starts, what comes out of bitterness is what? Just a reaction. I've seen in marriage counseling often where couples come in and they work hard on the marriage, but bitterness comes in too, and every 2 to 3 weeks it explodes and they destroy everything they've done, and half a year later they're saying to me, Frank, nothing's working, we're getting nowhere. And I answer them, yes, you've done a lot of work. If you're building a house, a mansion, you come in and put up 2 walls and knock them down. Put up 2 walls and knock them down. Put up 2 walls and knock them down. If you weren't destroying the walls, you would have the house built. Bitterness destroys. And a man who comes and serves and loves and gives and then reacts in bitterness, can his wife trust him again to serve, love? She's waiting for the bitterness. And all that he does, and then he gets mad because he's doing all this, and she's not opening her heart. So he gets mad and destroys again. And you get that bitterness, a little bit of bitterness destroys the whole thing. I tell people, when you get stuck, shut up. Don't destroy. If you built, don't destroy. You put the walls up, don't destroy them. You built them. If you're going to be stuck, go talk to God, go do whatever you do, but don't destroy. Shut up. Don't let bitterness take in. Don't exchange your covenant for hurt. Marar, the head or the chief bitterness. And it flows from us. There's a bitterness that continues out to other people. If we exchange, buy or sell our vows and promises, bitterness instead of covenant, we will reject everyone's authority and any obligation we owe. And bitterness will flow from us. From this word, if I had time, I would show you words like being cast out of the community, broken relationships, an entire life of misery out of bitterness. If I'm bitter, who's miserable? Me. And anybody who gets pretty close to me will not enjoy it. Who do I curse? Me. Right? So if my wife is bitter and I'm bitter, I'm not getting even with her. I'm cursing me. If she's bitter and I become a warrior, I'm letting God bless me. Something is weird about our thinking that if we love first, if we humble first, if we give first, they win. No. If they're stuck in the flesh, they're bitter, they're a wimp, and I go first, I break out of bondage first. Isn't that true? But do we believe it in the midst of it? And there are times I'll tell men, you have to understand, if I tell them to go first, to be the head, to go for 2 weeks or 2 months and lead without anything coming from her, I say, I'm not doing this because you're the bad guy. I'm doing this out of honor to you so you can lead and you can break free. I'm leaving her in bondage to give you the chance to lead. I'm disservicing her by honoring you. But I'll only go so long before I teach her how to get freedom. It's not them winning when we become strong and mighty and free. If they stay in bondage, they lose. If we leave bondage, we win. But that's not what our culture says, is it? And we end up staying in bondage. So the wimp, the propped man, the propped up man, the one who turns aside, this is the third option. Same letters, because I was going to show you the consistency. The sar'ah, what comes out of the wimp, is departing, withdrawing, turning aside, to quit, to violate the law. The head, what the sar, and then reshik at the end again, is stubborn, hard to manage. Think of young children who get stubborn, that surly stubbornness. And the vav in the middle of the propped man is to turn aside, to leave undone, to turn away. What causes you to become that is when you face a problem of any kind and you turn aside, when you face a relationship and you turn aside, when you walk away from God, walk away from your spouse, walk away from the problem, just turn aside in one small way, and think of small, not big, you become a wimp. You turn aside 100 times, a big thing comes, what do? You're already a wimp. What else are you going to do? You choose on the small. Do you see that? You're revealed in the large. If I put things in order 100 small times, when I get to the big, what happens? I will put it in order. I will conquer it. It'll be who I become will be revealed. Do not worry about the big. If you can, if you're stuck in a marriage and you're struggling, put the big things aside for 2 months. And here's a simple question. If you've been arguing for 6 months and have not solved them, you're going to argue for 6 more months without solving them, aren't you? So if you put it on the shelf for 2 months, do you lose anything? No. So spend 2 months and build new habits. Spend 10 months and put your life in order first. Conquer your life. Become a warrior yourself. And then start dealing with the small things that the two of you can deal with. But bless them when you do it. Give gratitude. Remember that word? Give gratitude to her, to him. When a small thing is done, and when 100 small things are done and a big thing comes up, guess what you're going to end up doing? What you've done for the 100 small. So if for 2 months you do nothing but small things, guess what happens in 2 months at the end? You're ready to handle a medium or a big thing. Because you'll just do it the way you've been doing it. But no one teaches this, do they? But isn't this what you've done with your life? Aren't the little things that you do become the big things that you're revealed in? Every place, you are all warriors. Think about the place you are a warrior. Do you hunt like a lion? Do you watch things like a lion? Do you put things in order? Do you struggle and conquer them? Do you rule over them to keep them where they need to be? Is that what you do? And when you're ahead of the things, on top of the things, how hard is it to stay a warrior? But if you've turned aside, avoided, gotten bitter, reacted, things get out of control, I tell people, do you know how hard it is? I tell them, they say, it's going to take all this to make your marriage work. And they say, it's a lot of work. And the answer is it's 1/10 of the work of a bad marriage. We've all been in a bad marriage, at least for a day or a month or an hour, right? Any of us who are married. How much work is a bad marriage? You're trying to walk on eggshells, explain things, walk around. All these things flare up. A bad marriage is hard. And the way I describe it is this way. If you buy a beat-up Volkswagen and continually have to fix it, and you're paying hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, at the end of the time, you still got this beat-up old Volkswagen. You could have done the same thing for the same money and had a new Mercedes. The difference is you pay up front for the Mercedes, you get the years of the Mercedes, you pay too little for the Volkswagen, and you're always having to put all the effort into it. It's more work for the Volkswagen than it is for the Mercedes, but the Mercedes, you get the Mercedes. A good marriage is work. But it's the work of warriors. I have yet to find a bad marriage that did not have a 12 and a 15-year-old fighting each other. They were adults, but in your fights with your spouse, are you really adults? Or are you 12 and 15-year-olds? Would you ever argue with your friends the way you do your spouse when you get to that point of a 12 and 15-year-old? Would you? You become bitter, you become a wimp. You're not a warrior. You're not an adult. Why? It's not that hard, is it? Just put the light on it, it's clear. So one of the decisions to make is I will never argue as a child. When I start acting like a child, I'll stop the argument. I'll put myself in order. I'll struggle with myself. I'll rule over myself. Then I'll go to the president. You want an easy way to talk to your spouse or your friend or your mom or your dad without bitterness and without being a wimp? You want a really easy way? I want you for 1 second to imagine them standing there, and behind them, behind their shoulder, is Jesus or Yeshua. He is in the room with you. And he's saying to you, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my heart. How do you speak to them in the presence of Yeshua? Does it change? Isn't that interesting? How hard was that? Here's the secret. A warrior serves the king. A fool has said in his heart, there is no God. In his heart, not his mind, in his heart. And often when we're wimps or rebels, God's not there, is he? When we're fighting with our spouse, God's not there. And if that point, if I don't see the presence of God, I'm a fool. By the way, it's a naive, good-hearted fool, but a fool. And do I really want a fool making the decisions in my life? Do I really want to have these deep discussions with my wife when I'm a fool or when we're both fools? I don't want the deep decisions made without me knowing the fear and the reality of God. And having Yeshua, Jesus, in the room as real as Sally. I want to be a warrior under my king. I'm not building my kingdom, I'm building his kingdom. Does that change it? So when we turn aside from following God, facing the problem, paying the price, when we leave things undone, we and our life become stubborn and hard to manage. Here are words, but each of these concepts is a different word in Hebrew, with the word for prince in the middle of the word. The word Israel has prince in it. It's the one who fought with God, not against God, with God. How often do we fight with God to understand, to deal with things, to conquer? All of us have to struggle, and that also means the warrior of God. Because I struggled with God, and now I go struggle with life for God. So when Israel, the warrior of God, we're called to be warriors who overcome for God and community, family. To accomplish this, we need to seek diligently, even before the dawn, to watch and roam like a lion, to live upright, to lead straight, to bless, to be happy, to sing. The word sing has warrior in it. When you've conquered, what do you do? When you're marching for the battle that's right, how do you encourage each other? Once you realize, women, that men have the deepest relationships as warriors, you will see part of that man come out you've never seen. Did you know that men are often more emotional than women? Did you know that? Do you know why you don't see it? You don't get down to the point of the warrior. For men, emotions are decisions, not emotions. If a woman says to a man, I hate you, here's what the man hears. I've thought about it, I've decided, and I hate you. Is that an emotion or a decision? Men, is that what we hear? Women, is that what you often mean? So men hear an emotion 10 to 100 times stronger than women say it. And you may only see a man have one emotion for 2 years, but that emotion controls him. If you get down to the things that matter in a man, issues of deep importance, you will hear him use emotions in a deep way. But until you get to that level, he can't talk about emotions. There's no way to. There's no way to communicate. There's no way to open your heart. A warrior man will talk about love and value and honor and concern and fear and hope. A wimp and a warrior can't. If you want, it's really easy. You want any women here want to try something with a man and see emotions? I'll tell you how to do it. You ready? Talk to him about growing up, what mattered to him. Sports, hunting, fishing, family events. And just keep pulling out of him things that were important, a game, a season, an event. And when you see his eyes come alive, and you may have to hunt and search and dig, when you see, don't ask for any emotions. When you see his eyes come alive, keep digging until he's telling about the game when he lost the ball and he got it back and they won the game. Wait until he's alive and passionate and on fire, and then when that's there, when he's there as a warrior, say, tell me, what did you feel? And he'll say, well, I was scared. I was proud. I was hopeful. And then shift it. Have you ever felt that way in your marriage? Ever felt that way with God? And they'll go, oh yeah. And they'll start telling you. Because to men, until we get to a deep, intense place, the heart doesn't open. But the moment you get there to where you're talking to a warrior's heart, everything opens. Guys, you know this, right? Women, no one's ever taught you this, have they? Men here, so let me finish the order here. Then I'm going to talk to the men. To guard and protect, to declare and rejoice with the good news. To tithe. To prosper. To be like an eagle in life. To be set free with purpose, to do what is right and succeed, to be honest, to hope, to escape, to survive, to serve, to rule. All of these are words in Hebrew that have Prince Warrior built in the middle of them. This is my best friend Danny Bengigi's favorite teaching because he can see the Hebrew. You guys couldn't today, I'm sorry. He could see it. Men, here's what I want you to know. You are not a wimp. You are not a rebel. If you were, you'd be happy stuck there. It's not who you are. You were designed by God to be a warrior. What I'm asking you to do is to take one small thing and another and another and another and know you're a warrior and put it in order and struggle and rule. I don't care if it's a 2-minute issue. Don't do anything big. Small successes are better than big failures. Let me say that again. Small successes are better than big failures. You learn in the simple things, they are revealed in the big. You do not teach somebody to drive a car in rush hour freeway traffic. They don't drive, they survive. Right? They don't learn, do they? So men, I'm not telling you go tackle the huge, overwhelming things in your life. I'm telling you learn the precepts of being a warrior in the simple things. Become what you saw in a mighty warrior. Look through that for yourself too. But conquer the small. Experience what it's like to be a warrior. When you face something and you realize, I've got a choice, rebel, wimp, and warrior, choose a small step toward warrior. Realize you are not miserable because of anybody around you. You're miserable because you're really a warrior stuck in the wrong place. Does that make sense, guys? You are created to be warriors. Women, warriors are the relational ones. A warrior, when he knows he's a warrior, will sit down and hear and care. A warrior will fight for the relationship, will hear God and turn. A warrior will succeed. But our culture has tried to tell men that they can't be warriors and they don't have much value in many other ways. In the 1950s and 60s, if you turn on television, they made fun of women. I Love Lucy. Today, if you turn on television, who do they make fun of? And women, do you like the result of what we're doing to our men? Encourage, if you're not married, encourage a brother. Encourage men. Let them know when you see them do something as a warrior, tell them. Tell them what they're good at. There are times when I do counseling with men. By the way, I'm going to teach women, and men know this, I'm going to teach women this too. 99% of women I've known, how many women have heard a man tell you, you don't respect me? You've all heard it, haven't you? And the truth is, women don't know what men mean by that. If I ask men what respect means, they say it means to give deference, to treat nicely, to give value. That's not what respect means to men. Women, that part of your heart that needs to be cherished, you know what I mean by that part? That when it is cherished, is valued. Let me say this carefully. If you are loved by the important men in your life when you're sweet and kind and lovable, or loved when you're an absolute, which one matters? Should you have to earn being loved? Well, that part of a woman's heart that is valued by cherishing for men is valued by respect. And if he has to earn respect, it doesn't mean anything. Respect is not what he earns, respect is his value. And I can turn to a man and say, I see, and make it really easy for you women and men. Men, there is the godly woman, and there's a new woman, and there's the old nature, right? Women, the same thing. Men, if you look at your wife or your sister or your mother or your friend, and you see the old nature, you're not called to love that. But if you look at her and see her as the godly new woman, can you cherish that? Pretty easily, can't you? Women, if you're looking at the fleshly nature, you can't respect it. But what if you look only at the godly man? By the way, that's who he really is. Did you know that? When you die and go to heaven, which one goes? The old nature or the godly nature? The real you does not have a fleshly nature. So when you give respect to a man, you're looking at the godly man, at the warrior, and I can turn to a man and tell him where he's wrong with respect. Just like you can turn to a woman and tell her she's wrong and cherish her. I can tell a man, no, I know you. I know you're capable. I know you're brilliant. I know I expect more from you. I can do it in a way that he walks away valued. So respect, when you learn to respect, means you can tell a man he's wrong and he walks away feeling better about who he is. It's not agreeing with the flesh. It's revealing the godly man. So here's the bottom line. The enemy wants women to be children, wants men to be little boys who need to be controlled and whatever. God wants mighty men and women. And each of you have experienced in life when you were a warrior. I don't even need to tell you that that's the right thing, do I? You've experienced it. Each of you have. And if you want that mighty warrior in your life, there are choices to start to make. Men, never again accept wimp or rebel. Don't accept it. I know it's a big statement, but make it in small bites. If it's 2 minutes, do a warrior thing. Another 2 minutes, do a warrior thing. Don't tackle, if you got an entire house that's messy, go clean the top of the dresser. That's it. And keep it clean. And tomorrow, clean 3 feet of the floor. And keep it clean. And the next day, 3 feet on the floor, and keep it clean. Where will you be in a year? Yeah, I don't care. The top of the dresser is conquering. The whole house, you're not ready for. But if you clean the top, you're a warrior. You hear that? You've conquered the top of the dresser. I'm not teasing, I'm serious. You've been faithful in little. If you've got a broken relationship, text them. I'm starting to see I'm wrong. How small is that? Or maybe I'm wrong. But do bite-sized conquering, putting things in order, understanding, get hungry for Scripture, but demand that every week you've gone forward. That's the requirement. I'm faithful in little. You may not see it in a day. You'll see it in a month. You'll see it in 2 months. You'll see it in 3 months. And as you start to become a warrior, here's the other secret, you will love who you're becoming. You will love the new relationships. Because most of the relationships we think we're having are wimp and rebel and wimp, and no one likes those. Your best relationships, look at them. Are they rebel-wimp relationships or warrior-warrior relationships? Even if you're only 10% warrior, your best relationship is out of that 10%. The bottom line is this is not difficult. It is who you've been created to be, functioning as who you're created to be. It's the most natural thing in the world. You've had to be turned aside, twisted, lied to end up where you're not a warrior. This is not hard. If you're willing to make the small choices, you'll get the big reward. Let's pray. Father, we come to you in your name. And we come to you for a miracle because we need it. And I pray for every man here that he will walk away knowing he's really a warrior. He'll walk away knowing the door's there to walk through. I pray for every woman to know the same, but every woman to also know to open the door for the man. To help turn our country around with mighty warriors and warriors who are men as well. B'Hashem Yeshua, in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. I'll be in the back by the books. Let me encourage you, have any questions, come talk to me for a while. I am going to and also, if you let me know if this message is working in your life, because I want to know.